understand. I'm in the field and you just sit in the stands. Take that bass out your voice. If you ain't got no gun in your hand, I do what I want, and you don't even do what you can. You do what you told. I got no love for my foes. They can mimic my delivery and copy my prose, but what they can't comprehend is how I stick to this code. It's either in you or not. It's not the kicks and the clothes. They ain't cut from the same cloth, can't come from the same loom, fit in similar shapes or even sit in the same room. Confusing authenticity with part of the costume. I'm teaching gifted children, you can't come in this classroom.
Dare to struggle, dare to win.
Hey, what's up?
What's up? What's up?
What up, though?
What up, though?
I'm feeling
cool.
Feel like a cool breeze, brother.
Listen, y'all, I want to go ahead and apologize. Backstage, they told me my videos and all my stuff all janky, so y'all gonna have to bear with us a little bit, but we gonna push through.
I think you gave folks some ammunition on you, man.
You got it. You got it.
That's how shit works, man.
I know, man. We appreciate you. You holding down the backstage for us, good brother.
I gotta do what I gotta do sometime, man. Like, these boards gonna be running off.
He sound like a Jamaican with 3 jobs when he said that.
But yeah, welcome everybody to the Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win podcast with Geechee, y'all, Yusef, Bunchy, Shakur, and me, Cherie, Danielle. We love y'all at Black Liberation Media, but if you could do us a favor, because we know that y'all are politicized and know all the what's to what, but if you could share just by copying the link and share to your friends that are not as politicized, we would greatly appreciate it, guys.
Mm-hmm. Get them in there. Episode 13, man. We about teenagers at this point. Grown folks.
Definitely growing up, man.
Getting big. Yo, so listen, we got a couple things today. We got a contributor from the grassroots thinking that's gonna come on to talk about too much political education, too little ideological struggle, which is going to be an interesting topic. And then we're going to have Dallas come through and have a interesting bill with us on their update. So I'm looking forward to this conversation, man. Well, what you Yusef getting all these awards and shit? What's up, man? Pass me one of them awards.
You want an award for the film?
Something. If you ain't met me about 7, 8, what, how many, 5, 6, however many years ago, that film never would have came out, bro.
Oh wow!
Right, exactly. Okay, I got you, man. And I'm long overdue coming to see you anyway, so I'm gonna bring you a couple, good brother.
What about you, Cherie? You an actress and shit on stage? Can I get some half of your awards too? Capitalism, baby.
Buddy.
Just write me a script. That's how I'll be all right.
Oh Lord, no, it's writing this script now. I'm telling you, it's already taking so much out of me. But I'm excited. We're doing an in-house read with CNB happening later this month, so they'll give me some raw feedback on my work. So I'm nervous and excited, but should be good stuff. That means a lot more to me than like a reward,
All right.
Look, man, I even thinking about, we were just talking about capitalism. Before we get into the main topic, I'm again, we just finished up August Nips, the ballot, the bullet. I keep saying that, my bad. The ballot, the streets are both. And there was a chapter in there that kind of, I wanted to talk around like how y'all experience anti-communism, anti-socialism, y'all thoughts, maybe some responses to critique it, but there was a passage in there that talked about the aim of the proletarian party not to deal or haggle with the powers that be, not to engage in hopeless patch up of the regime of the feudalist bourgeois dictatorship of counter-revolution, but to develop in every way the class consciousness, the socialist clarity of thought, the revolutionary determination, and all around organization of mass of the workers. And then it goes to, therefore, more attention must be paid to promoting the socialist revolution from the Duma rostrum, which means electoral arena. Efforts must be made to ensure that speeches should more often be heard from the Duma rostrum, propagandizing the fundamental concepts and the aims of socialism, namely scientific socialism. Again, I think the first question, like, how do y'all experience when people engage in like anti-communist rhetoric, anti-socialist rhetoric? I shared a post a week ago of Brother Asafo when he made the example of how people say, well, why socialism isn't working in this country? And he said, asking that crazy question is like asking, like, they say if socialism is so good, why is it not working, quote unquote working? And he said, the example is saying, if American architecture is so good, why aren't the Twin Towers still standing, right? And so, yeah, I'm just curious if y'all have any experience or y'all thoughts around anti-communism and socialism as a light bill.
I mean, yeah, when I know some people are not aware, like I don't expect that much. To me, it's the people that think they're aware, right? Because a lot of people in this day and age are very proudly able to say like they're anti-capitalist, but for some reason they still won't say that they're socialism and that they're socialist. And that, to me, I feel like is a lot harder for me to grapple with when I'm speaking to people that will be like, yeah, F capitalism and, F the two-party system, but then they'll be like, I'm still not sure about, and I think that's what throws me off. And I think it comes back to people not really understanding what socialism is kind of what I feel like, because they'll try to equate it where like it's still a system and still can have issues. And, so maybe I'm not like, they know capitalism is wrong, but they'll be like, there must be something else, maybe other than socialism, but they don't understand that socialism is scientific, like they miss the fact that like, it's different based on time, place, and, it's for the people, basically. It's the people determining certain things. But I think when people hear socialism, I think they think of still rules and restrictions and, they kind of put themselves they put socialism in this box of like, well, there still will be issues and rules and stuff people can't do. So therefore there will still be harm. But like I said, it's like they don't understand that it's scientific, that it's experimental, that it's, stuff delegated by the people. So I think that's what I struggle with the most. And I kind of have to always be brought back to that. But yeah.
I think it's an interesting topic based upon it's 2 point of entries. Let's name it. Most people associate communism with Karl Marx, things of that nature, even socialist type thoughts. So there's the anti-white guy, legit or delegit reason, and then the how our minds have been fed the failure of communist countries, the failure of socialist countries, without fully examining them, like someone else told those things. So it's kind of like the brainwashing, and we're just going off of what someone else has told us without digging deeper into those conversations. And so we don't have real honest and transparent conversations because one, we don't have the full story or the full information.
I think that's interesting, even as we wait on our guests to get into the conversation around organizations who would call themselves anti-capitalist or post-capitalist. And I think back to maybe Cherie's point, I'm not sure that everybody knows capitalism is wrong as they know or believe that we're doing it wrong. Because like the John Hope Bryant's is, the compassionate capitalism and all that other stuff, and the black capitalism, and then kind of to what Yusef says, like that anti-white shit is probably what a lot of that shit is rooted in, right? So I've had people, even within organization would say that they don't really read white people. They're not really caring about white people ideas, but then they also call themselves an entrepreneur. And so I think when you limit it with the English language, the people who critique not only the English language, but that particular social order, I don't see, especially while you still speak in English, why it wouldn't make sense to study such a thing. Because what it does is when you become anti-communist or anti-socialist, you're pretty much saying that like you want the capitalist social order to remain, status quo to remain, and you're anti like class struggle or worker struggle, which most of us will be a part of. So yeah, I think it's rather anti-intellectual, if anything. But go ahead, Cherie.
Yeah, I mean, for me, like I said, I'm talking about the people that, you know, would consider themselves somewhat intellectual and not really pro-entrepreneurship, will say Black capitalism isn't going to save us and are aware of these things, but still kind of feel turned off or struggle with something that it says that it's directly socialist or directly communist. I think those are the people that I think I'm most triggered by and end up getting more into it, as opposed to somebody that like thinks entrepreneurship is good and, you know, is going right up the Black, you know, I mean, obviously I try to counter that, but I'm used to that in a sense. But it's when I get in circles of people that, you know, read and that know that these things are myths, you know, that knows that buying power isn't real, knows that all these things are false, but still will kind of struggle to like call themselves a socialist or be like that. You know, I don't want to pick a, you know, I don't want to pick a thing, or I don't want to pick one way, because like I said, they view socialism as capitalism, where they think socialism is just one way, and they feel like socialism limits them instead of seeing how expansive it is and how, you know, free. Like they don't view socialism as liberationist, since they still view it as it's still saying I have to do a certain thing and subscribe to a belief. So if you're saying anything from a socialist perspective, then they look at it somewhat as, you know, still bad, which to me becomes even more counterinsurgent, because I feel like those are the same people that will know certain things are wrong, but kind of sit still and don't want to join organizations that have, you know, socialism tied to it or discussions around it, because they feel like it's some sort of, you know, propaganda on the other side in a sense. And to me, like I said, I feel like if you stand for nothing, you just fall for anything, where, like I said, you end up being even more counterinsurgent, when to me, you have the potential to not be that way, because you see the class struggles, you see how the harms of capitalism. So I think that's what makes me the most frustrated, you know, is people like that.
I mean, play devil's advocate real quick and ask both of you guys a question. So can you articulate where socialism or communism exists beyond just rhetoric, slogans and things of that nature? Same as we discussed on previous shows, we can't bring the Panthers in the 21st century. We can't bring Mao Zedong in the 21st century. Karl Marx, and I'm just using as an example, where folks are repeating, but where's the practice?
Yeah, I think obviously in a country where a party has been able to organize and take over the state apparatus and start to enact socialist parties, there wouldn't be a communist thing working right now, because there aren't stateless countries that are able to function, because the people are already kind of trained into a way of values in a way, and they treat and engage each other. So yeah, I would point to like Venezuela, the Nicaragua, Cuba, Vietnam, places like that, to where the socialist project is already underway. They're on the other side of it, and they have to fight off capitalist imperialist endeavors while also build themselves up. Because I think that's the thing about self-determination that we all claim we want. We don't factor in what sanctions look like when you decide to fight off of an imperialist power. Like, you will be cut off from most of the world, and you have to develop without particular partners and stuff like that. So yes, I can point to where socialism has got on the other side of deep social transformation, and they're developing and or protecting them, the social order that is now the dominant social order in that particular country.
I just think, like I said, I struggle with that sometimes, because I mean, I know a good amount about Cuba and stuff like that, but the second you even bring that up, it's like the propaganda is so bad around Cuba. It's like, well, they'll be like, well, Cuba's doing horrible and da-da-da-da-da, and it's just like, you know, it's like they don't even listen to the fact that, like, you know, you're probably told things about Cuba or shown things about Cuba from an Americanized perspective. The same way we're talking about, you know, like in our past political education, we're talking about like how history is taught, you know, like American history. It's like, you know, you get used to seeing Cuba through American lenses, then you're going to think like Cuba isn't doing well, and you're going to believe kind of all the propaganda in a sense. And, you know, then, like I said, so sometimes I try to bring up, China, and I know China isn't really, communist, and, people debate if it's socialist, but I know that they've implemented like socialist things for their people. And I try to bring that up, but still people sometimes, like then there's propaganda against China. So it just kind of gets you, in this kind of cycle where it's like, you kind of have to be talking to someone who's truly open-minded or like wants to know something different than what they've previously understood it to be, because like the second you say another place like that America has a lot of propaganda against, it's just like all these blockers.
Thank you guys for engaging me and playing the devil's advocate role.
No, I mean, also I think this is important too. Like there are nationalized and public resources that people benefit from, and they probably can't conceptualize and not benefit from it, right? Like be it fire or some other stuff. And so majority of the people engage or receive some type of socialist policies, right? And they appreciate it, but they just don't really associate those things. So for instance, like we are begin to struggle around privatized utility companies versus public utility companies, where private utility companies can do whatever they want with however they want. Not only will they engage in environmental destruction, but they also have practice displacement for Black and brown zip codes. And most of these people know that they could benefit from a public option as opposed to a private option. So I just think the reason why the conversations are so foreign and disconnected is because people are, as Yusef said, like more focused on the rhetoric and not really communicating the particular policies that they would advocate for. And I just would assume that some of those policies that's laid out, everybody would agree with. So when you get a Cuba and you get a Fidel and his team engaging in armed struggle, taking over the state apparatus, and then starting to implement socialist policies. And so, for instance, when people land get confiscated and then it's spread out equally, or when schools become no longer private and become public, and now you can go to schools, people will then be like, oh, this is what socialism is. And so without those policies and or a party to implement those policies or lay those policies out before the people, then we will still be talking in circles about like socialism, capitalism, whatever. Because I honestly, like, and again, back to what Cherie was saying, I remember years ago, this brother was like, I don't want to engage in socialism because I don't want people to get paid for work that I'm doing. And I'm like, what? Like, what are you talking about? So, but again, I just think majority of people are at that level of really not understanding. They think profit is capitalism, and so I just think it's a lot of times bad faith arguments or conversations that people are engaged in.
Yeah, as we get prepared to transition to our guest, I think it's important where we underestimate what it takes to engage in the liberation struggle, what it takes to engage in the socialist struggle. And a lot of it's really about uprooting the sleeping genes in our bodies that produces the counterproductive, the counter thoughts. Like it's an ongoing struggle. And we think it's overnight, and it's not overnight, and sometimes the harsh reality, it may not be in our lifetime. Can it happen in our lifetime? Absolutely. But it's such a commitment, it's such a struggle that we have to engage in on every day, questioning, re-questioning, and having these dialogues. I think that's the most important thing about political education. And it's not always about reading books and things. It's a multitude of things that, from reading books to having discussions to a lifestyle that we have to create.
Yeah. I think exactly. It's like you'll try to kind of like facilitate that. But like I said, I feel like when people see you trying to, dare to think or look at situations differently than like what is presented to you, it's kind of like, because people have because we've been so propagandized with other things in the world, like, when it comes to maybe people's approaches to religion or people's approaches to other things, they look at you standing for liberation and standing and looking at things from a liberatory perspective as like some sort of cult or some sort of religion too. And they automatically feel like, because they may have some sort of harm from, being in other groups where they feel like they're, are seeing other groups of people or thought where it's very forced and, not open. Like they look at, leftism or socialism or anything as like that same thing where it's like, it's this, this cultish type of vibe where like, you can't have your own thoughts, you can't have your, and they don't understand that like, even in amongst political organizations and amongst PE, and even now it's like we're having discussions and it's like, it's not that you can't, think for yourself or whatever, but it's just like, you're going to be challenged and you're going to have discussion on these things and you're going to, questions are going to be asked. But like I said, from the outside looking in, because of what people are used to, it just appears to a lot of people, it's like, this is another, just idolization, another, cult-like thing, and I just don't want to be a part of that. I'm just going to do me and not be capitalist, not be socialist, not be anything, and protect my peace, or something like that, where it's just like,
So we're still waiting for the guests to come in. I think they're running a little bit behind, but so I wanted to ask you a question first, Yusef, because Cherie is in our study group. But so we're reading Blueprint for Black Power Policy Formation and the chapter 9. And before we start, right, like people have already read the chapter or read the passages. I asked them, like, when they think of policy, like what comes to mind when you think of policy? Like either how would you define it, or what do you think it means to you, or what do you think of whenever you think about policy? And while you're answering that, I would love for people in the chat to answer the same thing. Like when you hear the word policy, like what comes to mind? How do you like describe what you feel or think about policy?
So I'm about to show my age right now, good bro. What I mean by that is, I read book 12 of the V. Watu, New African Theoretical Journals. And actually book 12 is like one of my favorite. And actually they have a section where they talk about policy, and policy, and from their standpoint was, it's the foundation. It is the blueprint to organizing. It connects the dot. It determines how we function, how we relate to each other. It governs our like, you can have ideology, but if you don't have the policy to shape your ideology, it leads to reckless behavior. It leads to being undisciplined and things of that nature. So that's my answer, man, without having my cheat sheet.
I mean, that sounds accurate to me. Like the values, the ideology, and as you said, the policy helps you direct the roadmap to it. But so let's see what some people say. Policy is what drives your mission. Yep. Who else have up in here? Appreciate that. Where goes? Okay. So I see policy as formal rules that comes from values and norms that exist in a space of any size. The norms and values dictate the policy adherence to it, right? There we go, Leah. It's how you implement your ideology and goals, right? Yeah. Cherie, you've been in the study. We've been having conversations. Like, what do you think about what Yusef said, and then maybe what some people in the chat are saying?
Yeah, I think and it's funny because this even came up on Monday in our CNB overall PE, where I was talking to them about policy. And I think, there's definitely a struggle on people like distancing away from like the idea of policy when thinking self-determination. But it's like when you think self-determination in like all the ways that CNB may describe self-determination, like it makes sense to have some sort of policy behind that. So yeah, I feel like, to me, I think policy is important because it gives you like a standard to kind of a standard to like live up to or to work towards, And I mean, with policy, like I said, and with policy for the people, you always have the option to, if something becomes outdated or something, or people start to feel like it's always the people or the collective's job to then like update the policy, change the policy, remove the policy, but I think it just gives you an overall blueprint of, something to aim for.
Yeah. So, we can, look like the guest. I don't know if some issues happen, but what we could do is we could take a quick break and then we can start the conversation and hopefully the guests pop in. They did respond to an email and did send us even the second part 2 for us to kind of prep for the day. So I haven't heard back from them yet, but what we'll do is there we go. Right on time. What we'll do is take a break and come right back with the guests. Hopefully they're ready in the background. Looks like they are. Then we'll get started with the conversation. So stay tuned. Grab a drink. I'm about to say a drink, a dink. Grab a drink and then we'll be right back with our guests.
I'm throwing copper at the coppers, but I'm shaking like Morocco. Say my prayers with the pistol, serve the sinners with the chopper. All my buddies got it from scratch. My house had Betty Crocker. His mama owned D. He ain't even get no shot up. Profit is invisible. Profit come from product. He thinking buffet. He can't comprehend no potluck. God bless the child with his own powder to rock.
So peace. We're back with a special guest. So listen, brother, I'm gonna try to pronounce your name and then you can correct me if I'm wrong. But if it's Nehemi'EL Ibrihim-Simms? Am I correct?
Nehemi'EL Ibrihim-Simms.
Okay, my apologies. So welcome. We were definitely excited about building with you. But yeah, tell us a little bit about yourself, then we can kind of get into the dialogue.
Peace. Yeah, peace, everybody. My name is Nehemi'EL Ibrihim-Simms, also known as Brother Nemo. I'm located in Crown Heights, Brooklyn, New York, Harlem, New York. 4 generations Harlem, actually. I work in the community primarily as a educator, journalist educator, working in the high schools, working in charter schools, working in middle schools, doing a lot of one-on-one work with young folks, doing a lot of social work through different agencies. I also founded an educational organization called Basima's Hands Organization, where we primarily do one-on-one tutoring focused on reading comprehension and writing development. We also do some mentoring. I do student and parent advocacy, interfacing with the schools, making sure the young folks' grades are on point, and just trying to build with them, build a relationship with them. We're also in the process for the last 13, 14 months. Basima's Hands has been involved with a mutual in a mutual partnership with 2 other community organizations, and we're opening up a educational center in Crown Heights called the Ujima Cooperative Learning Lab. And so we've been taking the last 14 months, like we've been in the space. I'm in the space currently. We've been in the space for the last 14 months, operating in kind of like a de facto sense. But we recently just renegotiated the lease with the landlord. We signed, and we're changing some things around in the space. So the vision is for it to be an educational center where we can do homeschooling pods. We can do some more one-on-one work, art programs, and so on and so forth. Sewing programs. One of the partners is Black Girls Sew. So they do sewing programs, in just the different programs of the member organization. So I'm also a father and a husband. I have 2 children. I'm married. My wife is also an educator. She teaches at Kamali Academy, which is an online homeschool program.
Kamali in Ghana?
Kamali, I believe the founder, Baba Samori, lives in
Samori
Ghana.
in Ghana, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, he lives in Ghana. So my wife teaches there. So
So listen, we brought you in for this possibly ideological struggle starting conversation, right? So you wrote this article, and it's in grassroots thinking: too much political education, too little quality ideological struggle. Education for the masses is killing us. Like, I want to start off really quickly. Like, what experience prompt this? Like, and by the way, this is part one. There's a part two, and we're not even gonna get to all the questions. Part one. So you got to know you coming back, and we're gonna probably finish this conversation. But what prompted this title and this piece for you to start?
Yeah, absolutely. It's a great story behind what happened. So I went to a PE session of an organization here in New York that does a lot of great work here in New York, and they were reading Dialectical and Historical Materialism by David Guess, and I was there, and we were discussing what we read in the context of two questions. One of the questions dealt with this idea of neutral philosophy, right? There's no such thing as neutral philosophy, that an idea is either a materialist idea or it is an idealist idea. And everyone gave their, we when it came back to when it came to giving feedback on that question, everyone gave their feedback, and then I said that I disagree with that dichotomy. I think that question presents a false dichotomy, and on the grounds that materialism is not the opposite of idealism. Right? Philosophically, materialism is a realist philosophy, and it falls into the realm of realism. And realism is the opposite of idealism, not materialism. And that was my argument. And I ended up uh, getting kicked out of the political education session. And I was frustrated. I was confused. I was hurt. Um, um, And so I talked to a lot of elders, and they were telling me that with that particular organization, they're not necessarily fond of people asking questions that, essentially question their philosophical base, their philosophical foundation. When I asked the question, one of the Babas, I got into a discussion with one of the Babas, and it didn't really seem like folks knew what had a grasp of what we were talking about. That's what it was like to me. And then through struggling through the ideas, it seemed like folks got impatient, right? And it was kind of just like, we're not going to struggle really to understand this thing, or not going to really struggle to understand this point that this brother is raising. We have other things to get to. You need to leave, and that's okay. That's fine. But they also didn't tell me that, maybe we should just table this because we have other things to get to. It was like I raised the point, the Baba engaged the point, and then we got into some struggle. We got into a discussion, and then it was like, you need to leave. He was like, what are you here for? Because I'm questioning the foundation, philosophical foundation. It's like, what are you here for? I think I also disagreed with something in the Communist Manifesto as well. The first line of the Communist Manifesto. And then after I disagreed with that, he was like, well, what are you here for? He was like, you need to go. So, and I wrote this piece in response to what I observe and what I observed, and I'm still observing, to be a tendency within Black movement activity, where it's like, we don't really engage ideas that go against things that we already accept, or that question nuances and things that we already accept. And we don't necessarily read things that go against things that we already accept, or different perspectives. I'm also noticing a tendency to not really fully understand the things that we already accept, right? Like it's kind of like a lot of times in these Black movement spaces, what I've come to observe is that we don't really take the time to really engage in long, drawn out discussions, and we don't necessarily have the patience to disagree. We don't really know how to disagree in a productive fashion. Even if you look at the like political processes of a lot of these organizations, and I'll name some of the organizations that I've been a part of my history in grassroots organization and grassroots movement that I've been a part of. But it seems like in these structures there isn't tendency within the political processes to move through consensus, right? It's kind of like these bourgeois democratic processes where it's like we're not going to struggle for consensus, we're not going to struggle to make sure everyone understands, we're not going to struggle to explain and to really like dig deep and to get into it. It's kind of like, you know, we start focusing on like what we call in Black movement spaces the work, and the work tends to be you know, things that you can post on social media, things that look good, things that, you know, and whenever you discuss something for more than like 15 minutes, and I'm not saying this is in all spaces, but in a lot of the spaces that I've been in, when you want to discuss something for more than 15 minutes, you know, people start talking about like, you know, like, where are the solutions, right? Like we start talking, these are solutions. And it's so interesting. I want to make a point on that. It's so interesting, this idea of solutions, right? I was at Sankofa conference recently, and Dr. Mario Beatty was given a presentation, right? And he was talking about how in Kemet, our response to the Hyksos invasion ended up being our downfall, right? Before the Hyksos invasion, we didn't really have professional armies. After the Hyksos invasion, we started having professional armies. And then we wanted to stop our enemies, the foreigners, from like being able to mount the offensive that they did with the Hyksos invasion. So we started projecting power into other regions. And this projection of power is what made a lot of things unstable, because we have, you know, you have to maintain big armies and so on and so forth. So I thought it was so interesting that our solution became our downfall. It aided in our downfall. And I think today in today's movement discourse, a lot of it is about solutions. We need, you know, these piecemeal, like monofactorial ideas around solutions. You know, it's kind of like, you know, anything, you know, it's kind of like, you know, I don't know how to, it's kind of like anything, you know, we see a problem and it's like, that problem needs a solution immediately. And the first thing that comes to our head, we want to go and, you know, we feel good because we're doing the work, you know,
Yeah.
and, you know, it doesn't seem
Yeah.
too explicit. So this first part, and I'll stop here because I've been talking for a minute. This first part that I wrote was really me trying to get a comprehensive understanding of this thing that we call movement. And, you know, what is movement, right? Like, and trying to get a bird's eye view of it. And also trying to get an understanding of how this sector of our population that thinks itself to be concerned with social movement and social change, how it behaves, what are some of its tendencies, how its internal dynamics, and then how it interfaces with other parts of the population, you know, and how it thinks that it interfaces with other parts of the population.
Yeah.
But very quickly, I've been just to give a background on what I've been involved. Actually, I'll stop there. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, no, this is great because I mean, it made me think a lot about, like I said, I read the article like a good 3 times to make sure I really kind of got what you were saying. But to me, it just made me think about, you know, like the whole, like, how we gonna win when we ain't right within, where it's like, you know, we're focused on the work, the movement, and just doing something, like you said, that like may look or appear good without focusing on what are even the ideologies within the group and how do we explore those ideologies and get strong in those bases. And as we were talking before about policy, how do we build like our own policy or way we go about discussions that is productive within the organization before we're like doing the work. Or because if we don't have a foundation of like what we're doing, why we're doing it, what's our, you know, collective understanding of what we're getting towards, it's like the work ends up being insufficient. And we find out this every time, you know. But one of my questions that I had specifically, going to my notes specifically about something you wrote, is you described two types of people, and you said one is inside, as you said, the conscious revolutionary social group. There's two types of people: a material determinist and a physicalist, dynastic. Yeah, sorry, I may be saying it wrong.
Dynamist.
Dynamist, yeah, dynamistic. I can't say stuff right sometimes, but yeah. So yeah, can you like explain the two differences of those things, and how they, you know, differentiate? Because you said that those are the two.
Yeah. So the materialist determinist philosophical foundation is typical, is associated with like the Marxists, right? The foundation of their analysis is materialist dialectics. And materialism as applied to the physical sciences, to physics, posits that the fundamental substance in the universe is matter being that which has mass and takes up space. And then Marx takes this materialist foundation of reality, this materialist ontology, and applies it to society. And you get historical materialism. And Marx and Engels posits that the motive force of a society is the economics, right? And the modes of production, the sophistication and the development, the complexity of the modes of production of a society. That's the materialist application to the socialist application of philosophical materialism. And a physicalist dynamistic orientation is also a realist philosophy, much in the same way that materialism is a realist philosophy, in that it asserts that the physical world exists outside of the observer, right? It doesn't assert that matter is the foundational substance, the fundamental substance in reality, in the universe, right? Philosophical physicalism and dynamism says that reality, matter is a composite of different forces and energies, right? And so the social application of physicalism is to say, hold on, you know, it might not just be about the economics and the mode of production, the sophistication and complexity of the mode of production. There also might be some more harder to some more factors, some more things that are harder to I'm looking for a word here, predict, right? It might be a little bit more unpredictable. It might lend itself, right? Social change might lend itself to something that's a little bit more complex, that's a little bit more permutative, right? And so that was just me trying to recognize two tendencies that I'm seeing, that I'm observing in New York Black movement activity. I'm seeing materialist, determinist folks, right? And then I'm seeing folks who have a more physicalist, dynamistic orientation, right? That was me trying to escape the cultural nationalist and revolutionary nationalist dichotomy that we're so used to, right? Now you have the social nationalists, you have the cultural nationalists, and you have the revolutionary nationalists. And that's typically the two schools of thought that folks are like grouped into, and I don't feel like that is a appropriate or clear distinction, right?
So, so good
And so
brother.
I try to make a different distinction between materialists, determinists, and physicalist dynamists.
Thank you for the answer, good brother. I think you was about to answer a question I have, which is, what are some of the organizations that you've been part of? I'm curious.
Yeah, absolutely.
As you talk about the organization that you participated in these studies, and then also part two of my question: Can you define in your understanding what is political education?
Yeah, absolutely. So your first question, I started out. So first, I come from. I'm four generations Harlem, and so my great grandmother, my grandmother's grandmother, who was born in 1898. She passed in 2004. She moved to Harlem in the 1910s, 19 teens from upstate New York. And her sons were a part of Garvey's movement. Um, and then my father's people come from St. James, Jamaica. So they're Maroons, right? So I just want to give you a little background on my, multi-generational. My organizing journey started with the Yaya Youth Network, right? It's an organization here, New York. They kind of got me on to the overtly like organizing tip, although I grew up like conscious and there was a lot of knowledge in the household that, we talked about white folks and we watched movies, Sanford and Son, we watched Good Times and stuff as a family. We weren't really like organizing. My organizing journey started with the Yaya Youth Network when I was 15 years old. Then I went to college. I started this organization on campus called the Black Healthy Organization. Then I came back to New York. I joined the Pan-African Federalist Movement, where I served on the local for 4 years. I served on the local level, I served on the regional level, and I served on the international level as a deputy youth coordinator. Um, I've been involved with organizations like the International People's Democratic Uhuru Movement. I've been involved with Research Institute HALA, How Our Lives Link All Together, which is a youth development, grassroots organizing institute. I taught for 3 years at the Ziax Institute here in Brooklyn. It's a pro-Black homeschooling program. Um, I do some work with the Ella Baker Institute, and I currently am a violence prevention specialist for the Kings Against Violence Initiative, which is a social work, social mitigation organization that works in the schools in here in New York. So that's a little bit of the organizations that I've been involved with. What was your second question? What is political education to me?
Yes.
Well, yeah, I think it's been something that I've been thinking about because I think it might be a little redundant. I think education is inherently political, and so what does it mean when we say political education? What I think we're meaning, and I write about this in the paper. I think we're meaning a twofold process. One, we're meaning a process whereby we can expose certain portions of the population to ideas, um, uh, uh, so that they can become a part of our organizations, right, and fulfill the mandates of our organizations. Um, and then there's another sort of um, education process that takes place between as a political tactic and strategy, political tactic and strategy between the organizations and the general population, right? And so I think that's how we mean political education. I personally think it should be a little bit more, it should be conceptualized in the terms of Asa Hilliard as education socialization, right? And one of the things that these organizations lack is personnel, right? We have a problem with trained personnel, people who have the technical capacity, the intellectual capacity to participate in organizations, political organizations, overtly political organizations.
So
And this is more.
I have another question real quick, brother. So what you're saying now, well, would you join that organization to provide what you're describing now?
Yeah. So in the PAFM, we had an 18-week process for you to join the structure, right? We would identify you through elders in the area, and then we would put you through an 18-week process. And this 18-week process was twofold. One, it was to expose you to certain ideas that we thought were necessary, right? That was the secondary reason, right? Because we understood that we could continue to expose you to these ideas once you finish this process, right? The primary purpose of the idea was to relationship build. The primary purpose of the process, the 18-week process, was to relationship build. And, we do things like personality tests. We do things like building family trees to get to know each other's like lineages and backgrounds. We did background checks, right? Like, who is this person? What is their habits? We take note of things like, do they show up to meetings on time? Like, what are their personality traits? And that is kind of what I'm pointing at when I'm talking about political education, right? Like, focusing on certain intangibles over and characteristics, personality characteristics over blunt ideology, right? Like for example, how do you take feedback? How do you take criticism? How do you give criticism, right? How do you disagree, right? Do you have the patience to struggle for consensus over, this is what Kwame Nkrumah said about Pan-Africanism. This is what Kwame Ture said about, right? This is our organization's policy on, it's like those things are important, but they're not as important as developing your personnel, taking the time to slow cook and develop the characteristic in your personnel that you'll need to actually work in a team, to actually be a part of a team. And this is a problem not just with the revolutionary organizations that I am observing, and I'm only 25, but this is a problem that I'm observing in the general society. The general society places more emphasis on intellectualism and what than relationships. We place more emphasis on the intellect than we do the relationship building, the emotional intelligence, the mental health, the psychological connection, the spirituality of a relationship, right? Like, we place more of an emphasis on the intellect, and that's a problem, because the internal dynamics of a structure is an incredible factor in determining how it interacts with its environment.
Listen, real quick. So
the call, just really quickly, call in these spaces, a lot of times, and most times, the dominant call that I'm observing in this time is for mutual aid and coalition. That's what a lot of structures are calling for: mutual aid and coalition. But if we don't have certain personality traits like patience, if we don't have things like we're going to struggle for consensus, if we don't have things where like, this is how we handle conflict, if we don't have things where it's like, this is how we show up for people when they're having a rough day, right? Like, if we don't have those things figured out, how we relate to each other, then the ideological things will never be able to be put into practice over a long period of time. We're incredibly ideological, and it's a problem.
So look, I know we got started late, and we have our comrade from Dallas ready to come on. And I do want to extend this conversation because I do think so there's people in there in the chat who obviously appreciate you. Shocked that you're only 25 and giving this level of thought or questioning. And as you even said in your article, is like you're not coming to no staunch conclusions, but you're questioning and having these conversations. And I think picking it apart is a really good conversation, but obviously we don't have the time right now. And I give a shout out to Comrade Yafeo for being patient with us. But I want you to answer this one question quickly as we wrap. And then, like I said, I want to invite you back, especially as you develop part 2. But if I'm quite honest, I want to have a one-on-one conversation with you more about what you wrote, because I think it's incredible. But there's a point in there that when we talk personally, we're probably going to grapple a little bit about Nelson Peary, because I think there's some parallels to what Nelson wrote and what we've read in the ballot, The Streets of Both. But could you really quickly kind of argue or lay out what you was talking about with the big brains theory, right? When you have like these big brains in one organization and they end up causing splits. And I know this might be a long-winded answer, but if you can, like, for brevity, like just share like the thought or analysis that you have around this big brain theory as it comes to revolutionary orgs of these organizations who are trying to, again, incite deep social change while they still struggle internally. But go ahead.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's an African proverb that says an elder can see sitting down what the youth cannot see standing up. I take that personally. So I talk to a lot of elders, and one of the elders that I talked to told me about this big brain theory of revolutionary organizations that dictates that organizations need more than one big brain, one theorist, one visionary to function. And if the structure cannot make room for these two big brains, then typically what happens is the structure splits. And this split weakens the structure, right? It weakens the structure. And there's another elder that said famously, our movement the history of our movement is a history of splits, right? People having disagreements and, I'm gonna go my way and you're gonna go your way, and, so on and so forth. So that's what the big brain theory of revolutionary organization is, just trying to explain and give insight into the behavior of our movement, right? How have we behaved over the last 60 years? How have we behaved over the last 100 years? How have we behaved over the last 1,000 years, right? Like I read in John and Beatty talked about, the development of ethnicity. And he said that this is in African religions and philosophies. He says that a lot of the villages were created because sometimes young men did not agree with what the elders had ruled, or someone did not agree with what the elders had ruled. And so they would just like move somewhere else, and whoever agreed with them would just move with them, and they would stay there. And over time, a dialect would develop, another expression of the African Asilic core would develop, and then we call these two things different. We call these two villages different when they're the same thing. It's the same thing that happens with our revolutionary organizations. Like all of these organizations have different groups who are using the same name, saying that we're the legitimate one. Or if you trade, like that's another thing I want to work on, like the genealogy of revolutionary organizations, like which structure came from which, came out of which. And if we look at it, what I'm hearing a lot of the elders from the last generation say is that it came because, people could not handle disagreement. People did not have the skills to take criticism. We had fragile egos, and that coupled with a movement and a group of people that have a messiah complex that are looking for the big brain, right? Like that causes problems, because that's the archetype that everyone wants to fulfill. Everyone wants to be what we conceive Malcolm was, right? The big brain, the spokesman type person, or the Elijah Muhammad, right? We have a messiah complex as a people. I think it's a part of our our colonization, and this carries on even into our solutionizing, right? Even the way that we build structures, this Messiah complex and other complexes that explain our behavior, explain a lot of what happened. And I think we sweep a lot of things under the rug, and we talk about like COINTELPRO and these things, very, COINTELPRO was vicious, but we also, we need to look at like, some internal dynamics and even some contradictions that were in pre-colonial times that were causing internal rifts, so on and so forth. So
listen, brother Nemo, on fire. Appreciate you for the work. And even I guess trying to frame this conversation. We only had a little bit of time, but as I said, we
I
want to invite
appreciate
you
you
back.
guys having me on.
Yeah, absolutely. And we will definitely the link is in the chat, the link is in our show notes. And I think this conversation can keep going. I think we could like frame it around some parts specifically. I could see there's some possibly arguments or disagreements or whatever in the chat, but let's keep the conversation going on. And brother Nemo, I will definitely be in contact with you for us to keep talking. But you want to say something really quick?
Yeah, so two things really quickly. One, support the Ujima Cooperative Learning Lab, located 198 Rogers Avenue in Crown Heights, Brooklyn. We fundraising. I'll drop the link in the chat so you could share. And two, I'm dropping another piece. In this piece, I'm arguing that the Haitian Revolution is a misnomer. It was not a revolution. The Haitian Revolution was not a revolution. It was an African offensive in Haiti. So that's going to be the next piece that I'm part one that I'm dropping on Grassroots. So look out for it.
All right, y'all stay tuned, and we'll be back with Comrade from Dallas and brother Nemo. Thank you.
I'm throwing copper at the coppers, but I'm shaking like Morocco. Say my prayers with the pistol, serve the sinners with the chopper. All my buddies got it from scratch. My house had Betty Crocker. His mama owned D. He ain't even get no shot up. Profit is invisible. Profit come from product. He thinking buffet. He can't comprehend no potluck. God bless the child with his own powder to rock.
That was a little bit of shaky. Brother Yafael, how you feeling, bro?
Doing good, sir. How about yourself?
Doing well, man. I know you was had a little bug, and I'm really hoping that you're feeling better, bro.
Oh yeah. I got had an earache or infection, so I'm working my way through it.
Word. So tell us what you got going on. I know there's a lot going on in Dallas, apart from the young brother who took the Bucker's life, who was threatening him close to Dallas. But there's a lot of things going on in Dallas. Tell us what y'all moving on currently.
Oh yeah, most definitely. For us, I can list three things I think is important. We were successfully able, of course, to rename College Park in honor of Black Panther Ibrahim J. Minka on February 20th. So the hard part of that, which was getting 1,000 signatures and going to City Hall and speaking to folks and having a connection and network and talking to park board members, getting them to support renaming a park after a Black Panther, getting them to rename a park after a person that robbed the bank was just a little bit difficult. But we were successful. It was the people that were successful. So with that stated, that part is over with. Now we on to the fundraising part, which I don't know why, but for some reason, the city of Dallas says that it will cost $11,000 to change the name, put a physical sign out and make it say Ibrihim J. Minka Park. So now we're in that process of raising the funds for the park. And so that's what we're doing now. So that's first and foremost, and that's a CNB-led initiative that we were able to do successfully.
Hey, peace, good brother. How you be, man?
I'm good, brother, big brother.
My question with that success and that initiative, can you, before we had you on, you talked about it, but can you reiterate for us and our audience how that campaign was a political educational campaign?
First off, I want folks to understand that Ibrihim Minka was somebody that I knew personally. He was my mentor. Those of us that in Dallas knew him personally as a mentor, been knowing his family for 20 or 30 years. And we had many in-depth conversations with him. Some things we agreed with, some things we disagreed with. But after his death, we wanted to figure out how do we honor the SNCC and Black Panther Party members in Dallas. Now, you guys might not be aware of it because you're outside of our community, outside of Dallas, but there's a narrative within the city that the Black Panther Party wasn't as successful as some other organizations. And so really it's been my personal mission over the last 10 to 15 years was to kind of reverse that narrative. And party here in the city of Dallas was a very successful organization, a revolutionary organization led by Ibrihim-Simms. So embarking a part of this process, it was simply, we had to go door to door. We had to talk to people. You know, we had to be able to communicate. I like what Sacramento got when they talk about neighborhood organizing, and they look at it from that perspective. Because that's exactly how we look at it. We look at it neighborhood. And so that's when we hear us talk about Highland Hills, what we're basically saying is that we're concentrating our efforts in making Highland Hills be a more so of a liberated zone. And so with this park becoming a success, as we have made it successfully pass on February 20th, that's more so like us planting our flag. And so going through that process, being told no, because the city really told us no. And they said, you know what? They said, we're not going to be able to do this. They told us this last year. They said Mr. Minka robbed the bank on August 19, 1968. We're not going to name no park after no bank robber. And so they told us no. And we went back and we got some of the elders involved. And once we got the community, matched it with the elders and ourselves, that's how I became successful.
Yeah, congrats on that. I just wanted to know, as far as after you raise the money and get the sign put up, like what are your further plans now that you have this community that's like now empowered? Like what are your further plans when it comes to like organizing the greater community around certain policy or just other things? Like what are some of the CNB Dallas kind of core things that they're looking forward to when it comes to the connection to this group of people?
Well, I know one thing. We're gonna do like what Dr. Yusef Shakur, Bunchy Shakur do. We're gonna do a bunch of giveaways, a bunch of mutual aid work, a bunch of different type of stuff for the kids in the neighborhood over there. But realistically, it's like literally a stone throw from our headquarters. And so what we plan on doing is really hyper focusing on policy, because there's some environmental issues that's in Highland Hills. And what I like to call is a three-headed monster, which I call a three-headed monster amongst the guys I know, and basically put as much pressure on the power structure as we can to get folks to pay attention to Highland Hills. Highland Hills is like one of those neighborhoods that y'all know in y'all city that's oftentimes neglected. That's what Highland Hills is. So my position is to get everybody focused on Highland Hills, as much people as possible, because there are many contradictions that exist. And that's how we're going to plan on moving forward. But I think it's a beautiful thing that we sort of resurrect one of the elders who gave us so much, and Ibrihim-Simms in the process. And really, our efforts is kind of mirroring some of the efforts that he put in 20, 30, and 40 years ago.
So you're watching Dare to Struggle, Dare to Win, episode 13. We're talking to our comrade, Yafeo, over there in Dallas. So we talked a little bit about last week, and then people probably heard like the 4 responses to hegemony and how our people at all costs are under at risk, right? Risk of genocide, ecocide, as you can say, environmental. Mm-hmm. But if you could talk a little bit about like the community patrol that you have, and then maybe even with mutual aid. Like yesterday, I was talking to a young brother from Atlanta chapter who's a younger organizer, and I was telling him about like our mutual aid essentially builds a relationship, but also helps these people change their relationship to risk, right? Mm-hmm. To struggle for the cause of the conditions that we're helping them meet. So if you can kind of talk about the patrolling, and then maybe your thoughts around what are you trying to do to the people that you're building a relationship with, or do with or for those people?
Well, right now, CNB Dallas, we have a candidate for city council right now, in Devontae D. Peters, who's running for Dallas City Council District 8. So our position now, whether victorious or if we lose or whatnot, is to make sure that we build that relationship with the community. And what I mean by that is going door to door, talking to folks, having these conversations with them, and concentrating on that for an entire 2-year time frame so that we can put ourselves in position. Now, as it relates to the patrols that we've done, we've done those for the better part of the last 10 or 15 years in different points and different times, and we've used that as a tool. And what we find is that that also creates a conversation with folks because they want to know what's the purpose. And we oftentimes tell folks that we want to be able to show them that, number one, you have a right to determine the destiny of your community. And number two, if it's something that's in your community that doesn't represent the interests of your community, you have a position to be able to drive them out. And so that's our position in terms of the patrols, and also to make sure that folks know that, hey, we're not going to just allow anything to happen in our community. We have a couple of issues in our community, and I always like to bring it forth. I know that you guys have heard something called drill music, and we got the drill. We got Dallas drill. I don't know where it came from, but we got Dallas drill. So we got 5K and Channel 4 that's in our community. But guess what? We got a good relationship with 5K and Channel 4. Anytime that we link with them, we try to have these conversations with them. And guess what? They respond well to it. So that's our thing. Our thing is we're not trying to intimidate nobody. We're not trying to detain nobody, anything of that nature. We're basically using it as a tool to create this conversation around issues, and obviously kind of deter folks from doing certain things that's not necessary. And that's my brother Devontae D. Peters, our brother, who's running for Dallas City Council District 8 at this particular time.
Is he a member of CNB?
He's a member of Community Movement Builders. Yes. Yep. So that's what we're doing, and that's our focus. His election is in May. I believe it's May the 3rd. And going forward, whether win, lose, or draw, whatever that is to be, our position is we're going to make sure that we go door to door through all the precincts. There's 48 precincts in the city, in District 8 anyway, and try to become victorious in that way. And so we look at it as an opportunity to platform our position, and that's basically what we're doing. There's not a lot of organizations in our city that can do what we do.
No, did he have anything else he wanted to share?
No, well, I thought you had something, but I want to stay on that point for a second, right? So I'm glad that you said that, because whether it's in our organization, out our organization, just around, we often get stuck on what we are against, right? Mm-hmm. And we very seldom say what we're for. We lay out our political platform. And as you said, like, you're running a candidate, right? In fact, again, I hate to go back to the book, but I'll keep going about it. They said, even when you don't have a chance of winning, you should run your candidate to lay your platform out before the people so that you can know what time it is, right? Meaning you can lay out, these are the policies we want.
Right.
When that vote come in, if you wanted to go to you want to get into some other shit, you know if you can or can't, right?
Right.
So it's like a thermometer. So lay out a little bit more of that, like, how important it is in all of this revolutionary social change or whatever, of laying out your plans for society as opposed to just critiquing the society that you don't want. So kind of talk a little bit more about that. I think we lost you.
Yeah, your audio went out.
See, they done got you. You start to lay out the plan now. They don't want you to talk. Try again. No, but I think you made. I'm gonna clip that other point because you made a really good ass point, and I appreciate that. You still out. Damn. Let me see if you sorry y'all for the technical difficulties. Yeah, you're on mute now, and then see if you can connect your mic or something. You got a mic? All right. Well, log out and come back in, and we'll see if it reset. But yeah, I don't know what y'all kind of thought about that, because I think it's pretty dope. I mean, I know sometimes, having the party formation of organizing is kind of left off the table at times. So I'm curious what y'all think about that. Yusef, I know you asked if he was a CNB member, so yeah, I wonder how y'all think
I know he was.
Okay, yeah, no, I know you kind of highlighted it.
Yeah,
That's really cool. I like that. I mean, I think, like, I don't know if we've had any other CNB members run for stuff, but it's cool that they're kind of, the first, if we hadn't had that happen before, to kind of get that going. Because I mean, I do think, as you're always talking about, it's a way to like really organize the people, and and find what we're for versus what we're against, as opposed to we're coming from what August Nips says. So yeah.
I'm all for it. I think what the Dallas chapter is doing, and let's add the context and nuances. Like the Dallas chapter existed before it became a chapter of CNB. So there's a ton of work, a ton of history there that puts them in a position to do what they're doing. So it's not like that. It's just it fell out the sky or crawled up under the ground. We got our brother back, so I'll let him answer your question, Geechee.
Can we hear him?
Oh.
We still can't hear him. Dang.
They trying to get us, bro. Damn it. I don't even know how to tell you to fix it other than go in the settings and hit the audio to make sure.
Yeah, just gotta check the audio, make sure nothing else is open, no other video chats. I don't know how to.
It might take for the next time, good brother.
No, I actually I think, and I was gonna ask him, like, it might be important to create one of our shows, actually have a couple of them come on and actually have a larger conversation around a topic or some work, because I do think there's some valid work there and some seriousness. One of the comrades in there is in Barton Bill Think Tank Study Group. Shout out to Brother Q. And I know that there's some very intentional base building and a strong groundwork there. And, I think ground game is the stuff that the left needs. So, yeah, I think that's important. But damn, man, we lost y'all, but he did lay out some important updates. And, as I said, I think we should extend that conversation longer when we have a chance to.
Yeah, Brad in the comments has some questions of like, define what a revolutionary organization is. And then when I kept saying what we're for versus what we're against, I think he was trying to get clarity of like what we're for. Then he also has something where he was saying, what are we trying to achieve? So I didn't know. I mean, I guess you can't answer that for him, but overall, maybe since you're reading that book, Geechee, I don't know if you wanted to kind of start, something on that.
So which one of the questions now? Because
I mean, they all kind of go together, but he was saying define what you're trying to achieve, I guess, through running candidates, like what one would be trying to achieve. And then, but before that, he was saying.
So start there. So in terms of defining, so if by the time you're running a candidate, you would already have a political platform out and an aim, and you would have a list of policies that help you kind of guide to that thing. And so whether it be taking the state apparatus, whether it be nationalizing all industries, whatever it is, that will be what the Revolutionary Party will have intact, which would be to break the back of capitalism, whatever. So you wouldn't run your candidates without having that. And in terms of the book part, and if you're in an undemocratic society, one in which, like the US, you will still run your candidates so that you can count your support. So what NIMS is uncovering that Lenin, Marx, and Engels is saying is putting your program out before the people, making sure it is in conversation and or critique of the other parties' platforms, so that you can count your support, and then you know what time it is to advance armed struggle, as opposed to just rhetorically talking about armed struggle, but you don't even know the temperature of the social context that you're trying to organize or cause a revolution in. So yeah, I think that would answer the question. But because we lost a brother, and we want to thank the good brother for coming through, we could start to wrap and kind of give some reflections of the whole episode. I know we started out with the anti-capitalist. The brother came a little late, and that was, everywhere almost. And then, the Dallas update. So let's kind of get some reflections and thoughts before we wrap.
Yeah, I mean, I think I like I said, we're always talking about these things internally, as an org, and I definitely think that article in general, like, it really makes me just think of, of like a lot of things that I've been thinking a lot in organizing, and even patterns that he called out. It's like, this is stuff that you see in organizations. And so the same way we've been discussing internally of like getting clear on our policies, getting clear on what we're for, like all of that ties together. So I think that, he brought a lot of that to the forefront, as far as like, noticing those things in organizations, and how people don't know how to have disagreements, how the disagreements lead to splitting, as opposed to like engaging in like principled struggle around things. I think that's a really strong thing. So yeah, I'm thankful for that conversation. And then yeah, it was always dope to hear about what's happening, in other chapters in CNB. I think what the Dallas group is doing through organizing, getting people fired up around the name change of the park, and now the signage. I really do see that they're kind of laying out the groundwork on the ground, and I think that is cool and has a lot of potential as well. And yeah, it's always capitalism over here. And yeah, so I did like talking about, that struggle of talking about these things with people, because it can be a lot, trying to talk to people about socialism, communism. But I think I'm getting more used to, how to engage with people around those things. So that's my little wrap.
Brother, you?
Where I want to start, man. Young brother, he was smart, man. Tell me, read a few books and things. It was, let me be honest, it was exhausting. I can't even. It's like, as an educator, I really respected his mind as an educator. You can hear that in him, the educator, and to hear his age. And it felt like a lot of nuance and context was left out of the story he was telling, because I've been in those situations and things. And so if I'm coming to a CNB chapter or whatever meeting, it's already prescribed, and it sounded like he read some things and went in with a preconceived notion about some things. So it was interesting to hear his what is his ideology. I mean, he never really defined what is political education, because actually in political education you have ideological struggles and things. And also, again, if I come in you guys chapter mind and we have a debate, or I put you out, that's not a knock on political education per se. That's a knock on me or you or a chapter or organization per se, but not what political education is. So I would love to have got more into those things. And yeah, that's it.
No, I actually appreciate that. I think I kind of feel the same way. Like, I think having a conversation that, like, where if you're saying somebody is engaged, so I'll start with this. When I was in DC, they were a couple of months ago, they was talking about like why they claim popular education over political education, because they think political education is just lecturing at people and it's not like inclusive and infused with culture. And so when I was reading, I was trying to figure out what he was saying in terms of that. But then like the part of like not having space for ideological struggle. I mean, I think some of us might know what that feel like in different organizations where there's no really room for ideological struggle. People will be like, we shouldn't be debating and all these other things. And I think it becomes a breeding ground for unprincipled conflict, isolation, and cliquisms. But again, I think maybe the brother is having a young experience and just kind of writing and feeling a thing, and maybe over time it'll be refined and become more clear. But even as I think about, he quoted Nelson Peary a couple times, and there was one passage that I was reading in Nelson Peary's book that because I think that's where he got the conscious revolutionaries from. And I do agree with Yusef when he said, like, I don't know that you being kicked out is a knock on political education. I think you can argue like, yo, this place doesn't have room for ideological struggle, but we don't really know the context, as Yusef say. But Nelson Peary was saying that conscious revolutionaries have to create a different kind of movement, a revolutionary movement with ideology, vision, and a scientific strategy to make that vision a reality. So when we talk about policies, the first stage of the revolution is to politicize our class, to make them socially conscious, give them an understanding of what our society really is. We must teach them to identify with one class and stand in opposition to the other class. This stage is completed by the formation of a political party of the class. Until now, the ruling class has made it almost impossible to form a stable party in opposition to the two-party system. The questions set up so the formation of a workers' party automatically means the worst of the two evils will win the election. The formation of a workers' party indicates that the people are aware of their real meaning of the lesser of two evils line. They understand the necessity of having their own party and not being frightened into supporting the lesser of the capitalist evils. So even Nelson, if that's what he read, has maybe a clearer line of like, you know, what it will take. Now he was arguing that a lot of times we are organizations is stuck on programs and we're not contending for power in a party formation, then again, I think it would be an interesting conversation, but I don't think he was able to lay that out yet in part one. And I don't know if he's going to lay it out in part two, but I do think there's a lot of things within his article that can be pulled out and structured into a more coherent argument or conversation. So I don't know if there's any other thoughts or response.
Yeah, man, I agree with your principal position, and it was somewhat stinging to hear the old debate, the revolutionary conscience versus the cultural national. Like can we move beyond that? And in the sense of learning from that, right? And it felt like it kind of felt like he just learned those things, and not saying he didn't, but it just kind of appeared that way. And I remember reading Jimmy Ball's and Grace Lee Ball's, one of their books. I can't remember the name of it right now, but they talked about splits. And it was the first time I had heard that splits are sometimes necessary. Splits are good. They're not always bad. It all depends on the framing. And so, and I mean, just knowledge and reading, I think that in the article, it could be something phenomenal. It's shaped right. Because also a question like, what is the motives? What is the tension? It felt like, I mean, at 25, not every 25-year-old is again, and no knock against the brother, is politically mature. I mean, even me at 52, I throw tension tantrums. I want my way and shit. So, and that's the struggle that we have to get to for the greater good. I mean, because a lot of, again, if we go back and review the interview, a lot of it was me in terms of what he experienced. And you think about how much have you experienced in 25 years?
But would you go ahead, Cherie? I'm sorry.
Oh yeah. I mean, I definitely think, the whole thing of like growing and learning, and I look at things that I wrote when I was 25 versus things that I write now. So it's definitely, that thing to it as well. I think overall, I think because I was looking at the article in connection to like, my personal experience in organizing so far. But yeah, it would have been cool to like, just talk more as opposed to like, like I said, a lot of big words and it's very well read. It would have been cooler to, kind of just all struggle around certain things and apply, it's organizing. But I guess, we aren't really clear on like the end goal with the passage. So I guess, or with the, with what he wrote. Sorry, I'm blanking. I don't know what we would call it, but yeah. So I do think that's another factor in it. Yeah.
No, I think I wonder if So again, the point of when he was talking about like these structures are engaged, right? These revolutionary structures, or they're engaged, and when they're engaging with other groups of society, they focus more on external contradictions, and they don't focus as less on internal imbalances. And then the question would be like, well, did you struggle with this organization long enough to help them focus on those internal balances? And how do you know that's what every organization is doing, or they all are struggling with that, which possibly are. But if you're in an organization and you might feel a type of way, you might also say like, yo, like, we're not really internally solid. And one might argue like, oh, we might be growing too fast, or we might be doing this thing. So he mentioned some things that we could probably grapple with. But again, I think it's almost like, I mean, I guess it was a lot. And I guess what I would say is like, it's not a bad place for a young person to be, but, and then as he said that
bad place at all.
And he said that like he got elders around him who talked to him about that big brain theory, which I think is interesting, right? You know, like, you know, Yusef and Cherie are both big brains. Can y'all focus together in this space, or y'all gonna argue and split up like other groups? You know? So I don't know. I just think.
I mean, as we wrap up, I mean, I just want to say like the brother is dope. He has a dope mind. You could tell again he's an educator at heart. Very, very inquisitive. Like the concepts is that he's bringing are necessary. I think just with some refinement. And I even hate to even say that word because I hate when people kind of use it on me. But I'm rooting for him because I think he can contribute. And I'm saying these things, like these some of the things I wish someone had told me at 25. I remember being in prison around that age, and brother being introduced to the Spook Who Sat by the Door. Like, man, you dope, man. You just militant, but have you read Spook Who Sat by the Door? I'm like, no, what's Spook Who Sat by the Door? And I ended up getting the book. Oh, I didn't see why you told me to read the book.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Go ahead, Cherie. You got something. As y'all wrap up, I'm gonna give y'all some Nicaraguan socialist music. As y'all was hearing it at the beginning. But go ahead, Cherie.
Yeah, that's what that was. I was like, it sounded. I was vibing. I was like, okay, salsa, vacay, no vacation.
He's showing his revolutionary culture.
But yeah, he's so. I mean, I was gonna say, yeah, I should give information because I mean, you know, I'm be performing in New York in June. So yeah, maybe you got some folks that may want to check it out as well. But yeah, I do think. Yeah, it was a lot to grapple with, but I do, like I said, the original piece that he wrote, I think like it really does tie into a lot of what is happening, you know, within CNB, which I'm sure a lot of other orgs can relate to as well, you know. And I think of that too, as far as like the whole big brain thing, because even me coming from like the theater, we always had this thing where it's like too many chiefs, and so, you know, or like we just didn't like we can only have so many leaders. So, but I do think when trying to apply and create a socialist organization, like I am still trying to figure out like what, you know, like what is too many, or like what is, you get what I'm saying? I'm still trying to figure out like what, as far as leadership, like how that is supposed to overall look, you know, if it's supposed to be built on, you know, socialist values in a sense, you know, but at the same time, not trying to make it be like, well, it's just every man for himself, or every man is his own leader, because then it's like there has to be, you know, we're doing stuff as a collective. So I think I'm still trying to understand what that looks like. But I hear also, yeah, what he's saying with the whole Big Bang thing.
Yeah. So listen, man, we appreciate y'all coming through. We're going to let y'all go. We're going to take y'all out to some music, and we're going to see y'all next week. We got a whole lineup of people coming the next few weeks. So everything should be good. And I really appreciate y'all coming through and sticking in with us. I know we had a little bit of time conflict, but yeah, we'll see y'all next week.
Bye, guys.
Jugadas de la inclemencia la tira